Beautiful. Well, excited for the session here today. I can't even put it into words how much I am looking forward to hearing some of these stories here on my side. I know we've got our speakers in the session here today, so welcome all. I'll give a quick introduction here to all of our speakers shortly. We've done a quick audio check, and then what I'll do is I'll turn things over to our speakers to hear a little bit more about the spooky, scary stories that they've encountered. And this is, in fact, a special session here today because this one is, in fact, in 3D. It's coming at you. Oh my gosh. And if anyone can name the sketch comedy show that I referenced that from, you will get a knowing nod from me because it's something that I grew up with. And then, of course, we've got some time later on today to talk about questions and anything that we've left unanswered. So before we dive in here, want to give a special shout out to our annual users, and along with saving some money, you can also get exclusive access to our annual only events. After this one, we are going to be playing some Quiplash events with a chance to make some money as well. On top of the custom reporting and the priority chat support that you get, you can use the coupon code Summit 2024 to save 25%. We also have a discount code to get you 1 free month on the website integration. On top of that, we also do have an updated referral bonus here where you can get over or up to $250 in a gift card of your choosing by heading to pro.goodshuffle.com/referrals. Perfect. So without much further ado, would love to introduce our spooky, scary speakers for our session here today. Would love to first welcome into the session Brenton Thompson from my hometown of Winnipeg, Manitoba. Brenton, welcome to the session.
Hey, thank you, Colin. And hey, everyone. My wife is applauding in the background. Happy to be here. As Colin said, I'm from Winnipeg area, so not right in Winnipeg, we're pretty close. I was kind of sad that when Colin came to town that we didn't have a chance to get together. I was too busy setting up tents, but little did I know that Colin still scouted some of my locations. I was able to see some of the products that we set up there. So yeah, thank you, Colin. I'm up in Canada, and my company started from the angle of a DJ entertainment and a production company. We grew into doing event rentals. So we bought out a small tent company, got our feet wet, realized that we needed a lot more equipment and a lot more people. We grew into buying another tent company. Then we recently acquired a linen and decor company. So each of these companies, they do still have their separate brands, but we're in the process of rolling it all in together, the Endless Events group, to be able to provide more full services to our clients.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Brenton. Would love to turn things over to Cam Petty from Render Events. Welcome.
Hey there. For those of you who are in the last session, I will keep it kind of short, but my name is Cam. I am in Dallas, Texas. I own Render Events. We've been in business since 2012. So in May of this year, we will be 12 years old, which is wild. With my team, we do about 500 events a year that are specialty decor rentals. We also have a floral division of our business. We serve corporate and wedding and social events through furniture and bars, backdrops, all things. I also have a podcast called The Render Podcast. You can find it pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts. And I also have an online course called Rental Biz Academy, which Brenton is a student of. So it's exciting to see you here. And then I also have a resource shop. So I sell some of my processes and the way that we do business, which Colin knows we are all about our processes. So that's just a little bit about myself. You can find us on Instagram at therender.events. You can find me at therender.cameron on Instagram, and excited to be here today. My story is not spooky, so I missed that memo, but it is definitely a story that will hopefully help you guys maybe find yourself in and give you an idea of how to overcome.
Beautiful. I'll cue up some like thunder and lightning, and I'll roll in a fog machine. We'll make it spooky.
Although I will say it is raining, and if you hear thunder in the background, I've heard it all morning. So maybe that's my portion of spooky that I'm bringing.
Yes, amazing.
Outside.
There's a few events going at some breweries and some things around here in DC because it's Halloween, halfway to Halloween in April. So, I mean, I do think that's quitter talk because for me, it's always spooky season. But thank you, Cam. Would love to turn things over to our next speaker. Well, there we go. We are also joined by Corey Frank from Design Foundry. Welcome, Corey.
Hello. As Colin said, Corey from Design Foundry. We're an event design and decor company based out of Washington, D.C. We've been operating in DC since around 2011, and most of the people who are here were part of another company for about 10 years before that. And we do, as I kind of mentioned, a lot of custom fabrication and decor in addition to furniture rentals, props, bars, all sorts of things like that. And so we have about a 75,000 square foot warehouse over here and service the DMV area, but also travel around the country for events with a lot of our clients. I also don't have a spooky story, but hopefully some maybe to Colin's metaphor, some thoughts, some moments that give you chills that you never want to be in clients. So yeah.
I mean, I love it. And that's the thing about being spooky. There's so many different flavors and textures. Are you more of like a midnight mass or a haunting of Hill House? Like there's different styles of spooky.
Yeah.
We'll find it. Everyone is spooky in their own way. And I will be the shepherd to help you
Wonderful.
find it. There you go. Perfect. Thank you, Corey. Would love to welcome Kate Walski. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you for having me. My name is Kate Walski, CSEP. I am the creative director at the Mitten Real Estate Group, which is a real estate brokerage. I do marketing and events here. However, in the past, I owned an event rental company called 307 Events and Tents. We're based in Traverse City, Michigan. And we did tents, tables, chairs, linens, flowers, you name it, kind of a one-stop shop. And among my other event jobs that I've had in the past, that was a big part of what I have done. And I do have plenty of stories to share from those days, but I'll try and keep it a little more minimal. So thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kate. And last but not least, he couldn't join us under mysterious circumstances. No, he was just busy today. But he did record a video, which we will be watching, about a real true story that happened to Travis Hampstead from the 1111 event company. So without much further ado, I'm just going to pause my screen share here, and I'll turn things over to Brenton to get us started with his first story.
All right. Well, you know what? I'm just going to go right in for it. My story ends with the bride on the other line crying her eyes out. It really ended just like that. And that's literally where the story ended. There's a couple things afterwards I'll share with you, but definitely a spooky story for sure. Scary, spooky, that whole vibe of Colin's mug. But it kind of started before we actually took over. So we acquired a linen and decor company in last April. We're just about up onto a year. April 15th makes a year. And because our previous company, we were big into creating processes. Obviously, Cam has been, we've been following a lot of her information. And so we inherited a lot of clients. And we also inherited some people that weren't clients yet. And so we took over in April. By about July, August, a lead reached out to us and said, hey, I had visited with the previous owner, had a quote, I'm ready to book. We checked the old paperwork and the lead was cold, maybe like 6 months, maybe 9 months old. But hey, a lead is a lead, right? We can, bring back some of the old bookings in. So we scoured the old paperwork, cleaned it up a little bit. She came in, met with our salesperson and managed to sign on the contract. And so we progressed towards the event. The event actually happened, I believe it was September of 2023. And the client added to her quote, setup and takedown services, which has always seemed to be a point of contention for clients because it's a service. And so it usually ends up costing more than they expect. And so in a bit to save some money, she removed at the last moment the setup services, but still kept the takedown services. Put a pin in there. Later on, we will not be offering takedown only services. But she removed setup services to save some money and left the takedown services. And so we're getting closer, everything's getting organized, and she inquired, maybe she can re-add the setup services. Maybe, probably. We put it back on the quote, and she called back. No, 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 let's remove it. Let's remove it. And of course, every time the client makes a change, if you're using Good Shuffle Pro, they have to confirm it. So it goes from green to red, and then we move from red back to green once they've signed off on the changes. And so we have everything set up. This venue, their takedown time is midnight on a Sunday, and where everybody knows it. And so it's on the paperwork. It's in the logistics, right? You got your setup and you got your takedown. And when we get there at midnight on a Sunday, the parking lot is empty, and there's only a few vehicles. And the wedding party, the parents, the bride, they're hauling stuff out by hand. The venue is almost locking the doors, and there's two vehicles of us ready to take stuff down. A member of the wedding party or the parents approach my staff, and I'm in the truck. So usually if I'm just helping out on a job, I don't take first position at all. I'm just a worker, just observing, seeing what happens. And so when my staff member approached her with the clipboard, I could see hands waving and she's pointing. And, I guess in a way she could say, you can leave. You can leave now. We got this. You can leave. And my staff member is quite concerned. So she shows the paperwork saying, hey, takedown's at midnight. And afterwards, she comes back to report to me. She says, yep, they've started to take down. They're basically done. They said we were late. We should have been here at 11 p.m. and nobody showed up, and they took it all apart, and they don't need us anymore. Somebody will call us on Monday to get a full refund. What should we do? Well, you know what? Let's not make a bad situation worse. So let's leave, because obviously they don't need us, and we're not gonna create a situation now. Monday, the client drops the items off, and then I get a phone call from the client saying, hey, so your team was not there on time, and I need a refund. And I believe maybe it was like $600, $700 for the takedown services. I need a refund immediately. I said, well, on the paperwork, it said you wanted takedown to happen at midnight. No, it doesn't. Yes, it does. But I'll go take a look in case I'm wrong. I go and I double check all the details. Nowhere in any email correspondence from her that says she wanted an 11 p.m. takedown, just midnight, and we have it written down. And every time she's had to change something on the contract, she's had to sign it. And now we're in a tough spot because she wants her money back, and we prepped everything to take down, and we were not given that opportunity. So we went back and we double checked all the old details. Nope, can't find it anywhere. Had a second conversation with her. She says, no, it's supposed to be 11 o'clock. The previous person I met with last year wrote it down in her notebook. You need to go and find that. You mean the 14-month ago original meeting that you had 9 months before you actually played? Okay, we'll go and check it all out. And so we went back and we found some old notes, and none of them were written down to say anything to the tune of an 11 p.m. takedown. So had another conversation with the client, and now things are getting a little bit more tense. And she was very upset. She said, this is terrible. You took this business over. This is horrible. Just the first person was so sweet, but it's been terrible with you the whole time through, and I want my money back. And so I had to calmly remind her that, well, you did have the opportunity to change the information that was written on the contract, specifically the logistics times, and you had 3 or 4 opportunities to change it. And the conversations that you had 9 months prior, we took those into effect, but technically they don't really apply to this contract because there wasn't a contract in place before we acquired it. Now, I was a little bit stern because this was maybe the 3rd or 4th business we've bought in a situation where we've acquired contracts and clients, and try and keep them clear. But she was very unhappy, and so she ended the conversation crying, and she said, this is terrible. I'm going to tell everybody I know you guys refuse to give me my money back. So I thought about it, and I said, I'll give you 25% off what you paid. I said, but we did everything we had to do. We showed up on time. We're only 5 minutes away. And if we were supposed to take down at 11 p.m., at 11:15, you could have called us and we could have been here at 11:20. But instead, we showed up at midnight, and we weren't given the opportunity, unfortunately, to do what you contracted us for, so you will have to pay. And so, yeah, she was really mad. She was crying. She hung up on me and she wrote a really nasty social media post that said, we took her money and we didn't do what we promised. And I followed up under it and I said, she's absolutely right. We weren't able to do what we promised because we weren't given the opportunity because we were misinformed. And she signed a contract that said certain times, and unfortunately, she just probably overlooked that portion. And we feel terrible about it. As you can tell, I felt terrible about it. But we just had to stick to our guns. That was it. And so that's where the story ends. I don't think she's still crying. She's probably gotten over it by now. But the last time I heard her voice, she was crying. And it's spooky. It's scary for me because that's not the reputation that we want out there for our clients. But we had to, in this one, we had to stick to the terms.
Definitely hear you on that, Brenton. One question that I often get asked is, how do you come across and like generate those initial terms, or what steps do you take to like ensure you have like good set terms? Was there some steps you took or some folks you reached out to generate the terms that you have now?
Yes, so it was a combination. We were able to get our hands on quite a few contracts from our friendly competitors. We asked them for a copy of theirs if they mind sharing it with us. And then we brought them all to our lawyers and we said, okay, this is the business we're in. These are the contracts that already exist. And these are the things that are really important to us. And we itemized them out. And then they went through the contract. They had a boilerplate that they pulled from as well. And usually at first contracts that lawyers do up, they're scary. They're a little bit too much, especially for our yes, Colin, they're very scary. They're a little bit too much for our industry, but some of them, we soften them a little bit, but for the most part, our contracts are pretty binding, and they're longer than what my competitors usually have. And sometimes that's a little bit scary. Maybe we're chasing people away, but it helps to keep things clear when problems arise, like damages or loss or conversion, as my insurance company calls it. We call it theft, but they call it conversion.
Gotcha. Well, I see we've got a lot of great shout outs from Jeff. Yeah, excellent handling of that scenario or of that situation. Appreciate you sharing that story with us. Cam, would love to turn things over to you to hear a little bit more about the story you'd like to share.
Hey, okay, so I mentioned earlier that we do a lot of corporate events. One of my favorite ones to do is the Academy of Country Music Awards. They come to Frisco, which is a suburb of Dallas, Texas. And I'm a huge country music fan. It's my favorite genre if I actually listen to music, although I listen to a lot of podcasts. So I don't always know what the new country music is happening, although I hear there's a lot of news with Morgan Wallen being arrested yesterday or the night before, and Beyonce's new album and all the things. Country music has a shining light on it right now. And we are currently in the midst of all the planning meetings and all of the details and logistics of what that means for this year. We've got another ACM Awards this year, which is exciting. And so you'll have to follow us on Instagram. It's a really fun week. There's lots of moving parts. It is not like a normal wedding. It's not like a normal corporate event. It is about 10 massive events in 1 week, all together for the same people. And so, and they're all at different locations and have different moving parts. And we're also in the midst of dealing with high talent. So you've got Carrie Underwood, and you've got, I hear that Beyonce is going to be coming to the ACM Awards this year. It's a rumor. I don't know if it's true or not. They haven't released the host yet, although I do know who that is. It is a big name. You've got Garth Brooks that typically attends. You've got Dolly Parton. You've got Cody Johnson, and all of these people that you listen to on the radio, they all come, which means high expectations. And if you've known me long, or if you've heard my course, if you've listened to our podcast, one of my favorite types of events is the one that have lots of challenges, lots of details, because I'm a person that loves to figure it out. Sometimes the hard way, although I'm trying to get better about that. Last year for the ACM Awards, it was at the Ford Center, which is in Frisco. It is where the Dallas Cowboys practice. It's their practice facility. It is not an event facility. It is very much so a football facility. They're doing it there again this year, although it's going to be a little bit different because of some of these issues that happened last year. The ACM Awards is in May. In May in Dallas, it is typically very hot or cold. There is likelihood of tornadoes happening in May. There is typically lots of storms, whether it be thunderstorms, lightning, all of that jazz. The people that plan the ACM Awards come from Nashville. They don't know Texas weather. And so when they decided to have the red carpet, which is on TV, it's streamed online and live TV, they decided to have it in a tent in the middle of the practice facility or practice field that was outside. Dallas Cowboys has 3 full-size private fields, and then they have a 4th field outside that is public that you could go right now and play football with your friends on the public field. So they had one of the practice fields outside had a turf covering, like really thick plastic covering. They had RVs on one side that they called the bus compound that had literally like Lainey Wilson's tour bus was sitting there. And so that all of these people get to like hang out with each other. Luke Combs and Cody Johnson, they all have their tour buses and they all hang out all day until it's red carpet time. Red carpet was in a tent, I believe, if I remember correctly, it was like 80 by 100 or so, big tent. And then they had a tent next to it that had the security mag system and then a glam tent before they hit the red carpet with TV cameras in their face. And then they rock the red carpet and then they go outside to go into the pre-reception party before the actual award show. Red carpet opens at 4:30. Show starts at 7. We had a plan for about 30 days or so of all these logistics coming to fruition, which is, I have a big meeting tomorrow about all the logistics for this next year, because we're about 30 days out now. Mind you, we don't plan all the logistics 30 days out. We do our final logistics 30 days out. So for those who are worrying about logistics, don't worry too much. So 30 days out, we were looking at, all right, we've got load in, cameras start rolling at 4:30. I have to have everything set for red carpet, which also turned into our after party. I have to have that set by 10 a.m. because they start rolling B-roll at 10 a.m. We had, like I mentioned, we flipped red carpet to after party, which means everything outside of the tent had to be preset. What had to be preset was about 15 massive lounge areas, 4 360 bars, food stations, photo moments, 360 photo booths, activations for some of the sponsorships. We had Amazon Prime had a sponsorship area. We had a whole bunch of different sponsor areas, and all this is outside without tent covering. So we had a whole plan. Wednesday night, we're going to load in. We're going to have everything set overnight so that at 10 a.m. we are done, hands off, B-roll can start, because you can't have anyone backing up trucks with the little beeping sounds. You can't have people dropping something in the background. There can be literally no background noise. So everything was planned. We had everything to a T. What trucks are coming in? What time are they coming in? Who will be on those trucks? How many people will be assisting? What areas are going to be set at what times? And everything was done, color coded, everything. About 10 days out is when I typically start looking at Texas weather reporting, because, like I said, it could say 30% chance of rain tomorrow and it doesn't rain, or it could torrential downpour and you could have a tornado. So I start looking, we're looking like we're going to have rain early in the week, but it's going to taper off. We get closer to the event, that rain schedule starts moving to show day. If I have 15 massive lounges, bars, activations, 360 photo booths outside, and it starts raining, all of my inventory is ruined and damaged. I have to donate it or throw it away, because if a massive, and I look at worst case scenario. I don't look at 30% chance of rain. It's going to rain for a little bit during the day. I think about, there could be a tornado and it's all gone. Thankfully, we have lots of weather insurance for our company. I also had the ACM Awards get weather insurance for this event, make sure everyone is all covered. Anytime we do an outdoor event, we always talk about what is our rain plan? What's our tornado plan? What's the fire plan? What's all of these plans? Because I know from past experiences, which I have similar stories to tornadoes and weather issues here in Texas, that we have to have plans A, B, C, D, E, and F because you never know what's going to happen. I'd rather know what's going to happen, anticipate the worst, and hope for the best. And so we get to, gosh, show days on Thursday. We probably were Monday night. I had all of these stars with their talent in the ACM Awards who said, no, we are having it outside. I don't care what we say, we're having it outside. And I was like, y'all don't know Texas weather like I know Texas weather. We are not having this sucker outside, or at least I am not going to be putting my products outside overnight to have a storm at 10 a.m. and then have sunny the rest of the day. Because you're going to get mad at me that we didn't do something or that I couldn't deliver later. So I had to work with the with Dick Clark Productions, who does like the New Year's Eve drop, and they produce this whole show. I had to call one of the Dick Clark Productions crew and say, hey, here's my predicament. I've got about $150,000 worth of inventory and pieces that are going to be outside. I need you to allow me to have specific times that I can back up my trucks and make that beep, beep, beep sound at specific times when you are when you're not doing a B-roll, or like when the cameras aren't running and your break time. So I need to work really closely with you because I am not delivering on Wednesday night. I will wake up on Thursday morning. I'll probably wake up at 2 or 3 a.m. and I will stay up and I will wait to figure out when is the radar going to open up. Then we're going to deliver. And it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. And so I looked at the radar. Things are looking good. So at 10 a.m. or so, when they started B-roll, I knew that B-roll was 10 a.m. to 10:15. I can back up my trucks from 10:15 to 10:30, stop the trucks, load everything in, and it worked out. Everything said and done, it worked out after 73 hours of not sleeping during that entire time frame. I didn't go to sleep on Wednesday night because I was so worried about this whole thing. Because it's not just the ACM awards that I have to impress and make sure are good, because I knew that they were coming back this next year. So my ass is on the line that I have to have perfection or at least some understanding, because I want this account again next year and the year after and the year after and the year after. So everything was all good. 73 hours of not sleeping and working with my teams and working with all of these different vendors. I also, not to mention, it was very windy as well. We had to barricade or separate two different areas of this after party. Essentially, it was all the Carrie Underwoods versus all of the normal people. They didn't want a mix of those people. So I had to put up what they had already contracted was pipe and drape. Pipe and drape and wind don't mix very well. Especially rainy, and having velvet pipe and drape with rain and wind, no good. We are not doing that. So one tip of how I overcame that solution was I have really great relationships with other rental companies in the DFW area who don't do what I do. They do big things or small things, or they do different things than I do. So I called my friend Pete Willis up, who owns Big D Party Rentals, and I said, Pete, SOL, I need your help. They have contracted pipe and drape. That's not going to work. I need this, this, and this. And his team came out, gave him a very short one. I said, Pete, the other caveat is I need you to only be here and only back up your trucks between 11:30 and 11:45. You cannot back up your trucks after 11:45 or before 11:30. I know I sound crazy, but it's for a very good reason. Please just trust me. And while you're on site, I really need your guys to be really quiet, as quiet as they can be. And so I had him bring 500-pound concrete blocks, and they had boxwood walls that they put over that and secured them to these concrete blocks so that nothing would blow over. And it was awesome. It was great. But I was able to use my connections in the industry. And I was able to also be able to take my past experiences, which I've got tornadoes I have to deal with. Some people have blizzards that they have to deal with. Some people have hurricanes they have to deal with. I have the lovely version of tornadoes, which they scare the freaking crap out of me. But I still choose to live here in Dallas, Texas for some reason. Figure out what your plans of actions are. When shit hits the fan, excuse my language, you have children in the room with you. when it hits the fan, when things go wrong, you have to have a plan in place. I think about fires. I don't have fires very often here, but what if it happens? How do you know what to do? What is your plan? You have tornadoes, what's your plan? If it rains, what's your plan? If it is hailing and you've got a tent, what's your plan? Because it's a problem. If it's lightning and you have a tent, that's also a big deal. For those of you who do tents, you understand that you can't have anyone inside of a tent if you've got lightning nearby for a very specific amount of time. There is someone that you should look up on Instagram. I can't remember his name and I feel horrible for it. His Instagram is Iconic Reports, or Ironic Reports, one of those two. I met him at a conference recently. He is a meteorologist for events specifically. If you are hosting a really big event, or maybe you're working with someone who is the DMC or a planner with a big event, look up Ironic or Iconic Reports. I'm sorry, I'm probably jacking that up, but I'm sorry for if someone's listening and knows what the real one is. He's an event meteorologist, which means he can give you to time and date and specifically what's going to happen. Yes, Ironic Reports. Thank you, Brenton. He's incredible. He is like somehow a genie in a bottle when it comes to knowing the weather and what's happening. Todd Events uses him quite a bit, if you know of Todd Fiskus, and has been able to save a ton of events with just figuring out when things are going to hit. But my points to take away is know your industry, know the people who are in your industry that can help you when things go awry, and also have a plan. You might not need plans A, B, C, D, and F like I do, but have a few different plans in your back pocket that when something happens, you have a plan and you can get there. And they can be small things like what happens when my truck has a flat tire? What's my plan? What do I do? Or maybe you get your battery is out and you're in the middle of nowhere, out in the middle of Texas where there's no Wi-Fi or there's no internet or whatever. What do you do? Think about these things because unfortunately, I can tell you after the last 12 years, everything that I've mentioned here today has happened at one point to one of my events or in my business. And it's important to have a plan in place before it actually happens, because when you are in the midst of a tornado siren going off and you've got red carpet hitting in like 5 minutes, or if you've got rain or if you've got flat tires, you're not of the sound mind to be able to make a quick decision. But if you've got it on a plan and you have it in your phone or in a clipboard or in a binder in your truck, it's really good to have those plans.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely. Having those plans in place and having those policies and procedures ready. We talk a lot about that a lot here with Good Shuffle, is like you need to not only know how to like play an instrument, but you have to understand like the mechanics and how everything comes into place so that if something goes wrong, you know how to improvise, you know how to, or you know what the expected procedure is to deal with that as well. Perfect.
Right.
Right. Well, thank you, Cam. Would love to turn things over to Corey to hear a little bit more about the story you'd like to share with the audience here today.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to second Cam's weather situation. I had a few stories in the queue for today that I've been thinking through telling, and at least 3 of them were weather related. The one I chose is actually not, but it's definitely a big concern. And one of the things we've learned is like clients don't read the contract, and so in a lot of our weather specific things now, we also put it in the line item that like if there's bad weather, this like red carpet in an event, right? You can't do red carpet if it's going to rain, or if it's rained within 24 hours on stone, which like in DC, all the steps are stone or marble, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a good call out and always something to be thinking about. But in the vein of people not reading contracts, I think we've been using Good Shuffle since 2018. One of the things that I've been really pushing is like the internal and external accountability, in part because every time we learn a lesson, we find a way to solve, to document that lesson for the future and make sure we're being really clear about what's possible, what's not possible, people checking things off. And so I've had this story happen twice in my time at Design Foundry. I think once before we were using Good Shuffle and once since we've been using it, and in reverse ways. We were setting up an event in a concert venue in DC, That's a really built out, beautiful space. And a client, a big tech company, was holding like a 2-day conference in the space. And so they're a very colorful company, and it was a very like dark wood, dark space, so they wanted to bring a lot of color to it. So we had a pretty large build out that was happening, and we were coming in at like 5 in the morning because the client was coming in the afternoon to do rehearsals. So they wanted us in and out of the way so that AV could come in after us and do what they needed to do. So we had a stage set build out. There was a pretty hefty ceiling installation in the space that involved a lot of colorful lanterns and some custom cutout pieces and things like that. And then around the space were some photos of a lot of famous musicians that related to the building. And so we had to cover all of those and swap them out to branding elements. And so it was a pretty hefty install. I think we had like 8 or 10 people there at 5 a.m., and they finished up around 10 a.m., which is what we had been scheduled to do. Nobody was planning to be there in the morning. The people from the venue were kind of like around, but not really, part of it. They were coming in the afternoon to do their part and get set up. Our team left the site, and we got a call from the project manager about around 11 a.m. Hey, we need to find some people. We got to go back to the venue. And, okay, well, like how many people? What's the situation? Whatever. Well, as many as we can find, and we got to get the truck back too. And it turns out that the client had not read their contract properly, and the date was wrong on the contract, and it was actually supposed to be the following week. And the venue person came in to set up for what was going to be a concert that night, and we had to go in and strike the entire room's worth of stuff, and then get into a difficult conversation with the client about the fact that like their contract has a date in it. They've signed this contract, and the date's not just in one place, right? It's in the date at the top, it's in the labor schedule, trucking schedule, all of those sorts of things. And we had to go in and take all of this stuff down, and then obviously protect it because a lot of it's custom made for this event. And it needs to go back up again the following week, but then also have this whole conversation about who's paying for all this extra labor. It's labor, as Brenton's story, like labor is not cheap. It doesn't, like everyone gets minimums. People have to come back. In DC, we're paying people for parking, especially when we're downtown, like all these extra costs. And it was a really interesting situation that we had not experienced before. It happens a lot, like in the email traffic, as Brenton was mentioning, like people throw things back and forth really quickly in emails, and the client will be like, oh, sorry, I said Tuesday, I meant Wednesday. I said 9 a.m., I meant actually it needs to be 11. This changes. And so like in the confirmation email that goes out with the quote and the invoice, it says like you are responsible for checking all the following things on this quote and making sure. And because it happens so often that those sorts of things happen. And then in the reverse story, we were doing an event at a hotel in DC, and we're all sitting in the office. It's a quiet Wednesday. We didn't have another event going on, so everyone's just like in prep mode, working on things that are coming up. It's busy season, so it was funny to have a random day. And one of our project managers got a call from a client. Hey, I just got a call from the hotel. They mentioned you weren't there yet. What's going on? And again, same story. Yeah, we're not supposed to be there till the date on the contract is Friday. That's what's in our calendar. Well, actually, it's today. I don't know how we missed that. And it's one of those moments where you appreciate and love the people that you work with, where everybody in the office, everybody in the warehouse, like jumps into action, and like literally, our staff is down there installing, not necessarily our install staff because they weren't scheduled. So it's our project managers and our designers, and we're printing things that hadn't necessarily been finished yet, and pulling things off the shelves and packing trucks. Again, all because the client didn't check the thing that they signed. And of course, as I'm sure all of us, like we all want to go above and beyond to make the client's experience great. And like to Brenton's point, like you don't want to leave someone with a bad taste in their mouth, and you're not just gonna be like, well, like, sorry, your contract said Friday, so we'll see you on Friday. It's like, okay, the event's today, let's pull this into action and figure it out, and then we'll circle back on how to solve these problems afterwards. And so definitely the big lesson out of this and sort of out of a lot of the different details is to really make sure that that we are now calling out the really key things that we have found people miss, and B, like making sure that we're detailing out all of the specifics, really, especially because we do a lot of custom fabrication. Again, literally, it just happened today where like there's a whole email chain where a venue is providing the stage, and we said the stage is going to be 24 inches tall, and they said yes. And we said, just confirming the stage will be set when we arrive at 9 a.m. and it's going to be 24 inches tall. And they replied yes. And then we showed up on site this morning, it was 16 inches. And then our stuff is built for a 24-inch stage, and you have to go through this whole process. These mistakes come up, and so at least the way that we have learned to like take the pressure off us and to make sure that if there's a cost involved, it's an easy conversation to say, like, literally right here, both obviously in this email chain, but on the contract it says the stage facing is 24 inches tall, or the steps are 24 inches tall, whatever the situation is. Because it happens, it happens a lot that people are not necessarily paying attention to the details. They like a pretty picture, they like a couch, they like this, and then they're ignoring sort of the rest of the details that come along with it.
Gotcha. Well, I'm excited to share Travis's video, because this is there's a few things in relation to like clients reading details and the like. But before I share the video, would love to hear a little bit from Kate, to hear a little bit more about your story that you'd like to share. And thank you again, Corey.
Well, thank you. My story isn't actually just like one specific incident, unfortunately, and it's not totally my story. We got involved, but there was another vendor in town who I really liked, and he was great to work with. And that's ultimately what led to his downfall. He was the yes guy, right? If you've got someone that, you're like, oh, I need this. Oh yeah, I've got it. Okay, just borrow it, just take it. And he was doing this to everybody, and so he would be quoting out events, and they're like, oh, well, I need a disco ball installation. And he'd be like, yeah, sure, we'll do that. And we'd just randomly price it out and say, hey, yeah, we can do that. He was a tent guy, and again, super nice to work with. But he, someone would say, oh, I need these vintage goblets from like 2 hours away. And he's like, oh, my guys will pick them up. And I'm not exaggerating. So we can all imagine, profit wise, how things are starting to go. There was one particular season that really got challenging for him. The start of the season, he took on a job that was a lot bigger than he had ever done before, which I'm sure a lot of people have experienced. You've got to, go beyond your previous boundaries. And, but I think it's important to really know what you're doing if you're going to be going beyond what you've done in the past and what you've been comfortable with. And he went to build a large stage and do this huge event in Detroit, and a tent that he had never set up before. So here he is setting up a new tent. He's building a raised level floor. It got to the point where they were setting it up. People were like going through the floor, like the floor was not working. They weren't able to fully set up the tent. They had to bring in another event rental company. So that's kind of how his season started. And then fast forward to like the next event where he had promised disco balls and things like that. He's putting things on contracts that I think he intended at one point to be able to provide, but as we know how busy season gets, and you get into it, and if you aren't staying organized, if you're not staying on top of things, and maybe you put special items on there that you haven't gotten in the past, if you don't have a great process for ordering those and making sure what's out of stock or things like that. Like he got to the morning of an event and they're like, well, you have this massive disco ball installation. And he's like, well, I don't have any disco balls. So now they're contacting us, and we're like, well, we quoted it out for you, but we also quoted it higher. And so, you went with somebody else who, again, was just trying to do everything and anything. And I think we also all know too, that when you really start getting out of your niche and trying to take on too much, that can be an issue. He went through that summer event after event, like every weekend it became, he was stressed out. He had totally overpromised things to everybody. And then the inventory wasn't getting taken care of. Tents were being put up without all of their tent legs. There were holes in tents, all of that kind of thing. There was another floor that they put up that during the wedding, 3 people fell through. And again, it was like he didn't know his limits when he was selling things. And again, it's great to be pushing yourself, but you need to do it realistically. And there was another major wedding that he did, and they didn't end up with any lights. They didn't have lights. We got a call the week of that he had promised them dishes, and we had to load up an entire truck full of dishes to take out there to try and help this wedding. And so it was weekend after weekend. And for us as the other rental company, even though we were, friendly competitors, we really appreciated him. I felt bad for him because I knew he got in way over his head. And I myself had felt things like that in the past. Like when you're growing, it's tough because you want to do it in a strategic way, but sometimes, especially in the beginning, you're like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. You're growing a business, and it's so important to know where you're going with it and making sure that you're very intentional with what you are doing. So towards the end of the summer, we're calling him at the beginning of the week and we're saying, what do you need? What do you not have? You need to look at your contracts. And even then he still wasn't looking at them. We're like, just tell us, let's fix this now. And before we get to the weekend, and then we have people calling us because they're missing anything and everything. And he was still also afraid to ask for help, which I think was huge because we, as I think, Cam was talking about, like, the pipe and drape wasn't going to work. Well, we've all been there where we're like, oh, our original plan's not working. And for him, we were like, we're here, we're trying to help. We've got to figure this out. But he wasn't ready to ask for help. And so you can imagine there was a lot of weddings that were not very happy about this. Some lawsuits that came into play. He ended up finally filing for bankruptcy, shut the business down and everything. And it was really sad because, again, he was a very hard worker. I think one of his biggest challenges in the beginning was that he didn't have very good administrative support. Like, he could go knock out a 10, he did a great job, whatever, but I think that is really important to make sure that, and I also had experienced that in the past, like you're like starting to do everything yourself. And then at what point do you take on more help? But I think that was another issue, and I'm certainly not here to like talk bad about him or anything, but I think it's definitely lessons that we can all learn from. Because like I said, growth is really hard. And I'm assuming pretty much anybody here has experienced that. And when you're looking ahead and you see that you're building up your business, and like when you hire more staff and things like that, it's taking that time out to just plan ahead. Make sure that you have someone who's able to take care of the administrative tasks. Make sure that you're paying attention to your budget and your profit on your items that you are renting out. And I know Good Shuffle was great for me. Like, it would tell me, hey, you have these custom products that you're getting in, so make sure you're paying attention to that. But he got so far behind and so overwhelmed and overloaded, he couldn't do anything. Like, it's like on a roller coaster, you can't get off. And and then if you find yourself in that position where you're like, okay, I got in over my head, ask for help. Like, there's so many wonderful people in this industry. And if you're thinking, wow, I can't do all this, something happened or whatever, or maybe you're going through something in your life and you just need help, being honest about it. And that was the other thing. Like, he wasn't willing to be honest. He wasn't honest with the clients, with the planners. And, if he had just taken a step back and said, okay, this is where we're at, we just need to fix it. But he was such a people pleaser, and he just kept thinking he could somehow get it done. And it ended up, unfortunately, the company went out of business. And I hated to see it because he was a friend, but I definitely, there were certain things that I'm like, wow, I've experienced this on a small scale, like where you're just growing and trying to learn how to price things and all of that. But it's nothing we really want anybody to have to go through. And so hopefully, there's a couple lessons there that we can all learn.
Gotcha. Yeah, I really appreciate that story, Kate. The book I'm reading right now is about like tracking what like a tipping point is for, it gives a few examples, but like at what point does a line of cars become like a smooth moving voyage of traffic to a traffic jam? Like what needs to happen to get to that like critical state, or like the other examples, how close do trees need to be in order to like be conductive to forest fires? Like where does that capacity turn from we could deal with it, we could deal with it, we could deal with it, to tipping over?
Mhm.
And yeah, it's interesting to hear the other examples and the other scenarios. And yeah, a lot of love of the stories and the experiences that were shared here. So thank you again, Kate, for that story. I'm going to
Mhm.
go and share the quick video from Travis from 1111 to close us out here. Here he is.
Hey guys, my name is Travis with 1111 Event Co. And I am a design and decor rental company out of Hiawatha, Iowa, near Cedar Rapids. I've been in the wedding industry now for 13 years, most of that as a DJ. So as you can imagine, I've seen quite a bit in my time here in the wedding industry, as I'm sure many of you have. With that, the decor rental business has brought some additional challenges than the DJ business, obviously. One of that I'm here to talk about is a situation that involved a florist, actually, and one of my arbors. So I had set up an arbor at a venue that I've been at many times before, at an outdoor space that I have set up many times before as well, with an arbor that I had also set up many times before. And this florist is someone that I had worked with also, as you guessed it, many times before. Probably one of my closest vendor friends as far as floral goes. And an unfortunate event happened where I had set the arbor up. Actually, I had my brother set the arbor up because I was out of town. He was trained and knows how to do all of that stuff. So he was there. He set it up the morning of the event and put it in place, and they okayed everything. Everything was fine. I got a call a few hours after that, and the arbor had actually ended up falling on the florist, one of the florists, after the installation was complete. They affixed two large floral pieces to that arbor, which hadn't been done before, and it was quite heavy. And unfortunately had been now front heavy, and as they finished, walked away, and it tipped over and hit her in the back of the head. Knocked her out, and they had to call an ambulance, and EMTs and everything showed up and checked her out, sent her to the hospital, all of that. So what evolved from that now, 2 years later, is I'm in the middle of a lawsuit with injuries that have been sustained from that time. And there's things that I hadn't had in place that I do now have in place, thanks to Good Shuffle, because at the time I didn't have any way to sign off officially on the project. And now with the receipt of goods and services, I've been able to incorporate the terms and conditions that apply to all of the legal jargon, I guess I would say, for leaving things there unattended, anything that accidental that may happen after everything's been installed. This is going to be a great additional layer of comfort for me and my business, to know that bringing this in, everybody's signed off on everything, everything is approved, and I have the signatures to prove it. So thanks to Colin at Good Shuffle, he did introduce me to the receipt of goods and services feature on there, and I will be using that quite often, actually every time going forward. So again, always great to cover yourself in this industry. As we know, we're really never surprised. We shouldn't be surprised at really anything that happens, because I'm sure many of you have also seen a great deal of crazy things that you thought probably would never happen that have happened. So use that feature. It's going to be fantastic for you. Put the things in there to give you comfort for when you set up your event decor or drop off the decor or set up an arbor or whatever, that now when you leave you have the comfort in knowing that all of that is taken care of. So wish I could be there, and maybe next year I can attend. So enjoy, and I appreciate all of you, and have a great day. Thank you.
All right. Perfect. Well, that is a story from Travis. Receipt of goods and services is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. That and closing fulfillment. I will always mention it. If I look into your account, you're not closing fulfillment. That is one thing I will always mention, gladly bring to mind. Well, thank you all for attending today. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you, Corey, Cam, Kate, and Brenton, and Travis, wherever you are in the world today. Appreciate you taking the time to join with us here and sharing those stories. And for all of those of you who have joined here, we look forward to seeing you at the closing ceremonies. And for those of you who are on annual billing, look forward to seeing you at our closing games starting shortly after the closing ceremony, closing remarks. And if there is anything else we can help with, by all means, let us know. But thanks again to our speakers, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.